Thanks for joining us today. We have an exciting conversation planned. You're going to hear from Don Turnage, owner of the Martial Arts Laboratory here in Princeton and McKinney. You're going to hear a little bit about Don's story, how he started this gym, what drives him, what he's about, and also the culture that he's built in the gyms that he started. Lots of really great moments where Don shares from his life experience and things that I think that are going to help business owners. Maybe you're a brand new business owner, or maybe you're someone who's been established in the business for a really long time and you're looking to think a little bit different or change your perspective on some things. This conversation is going to really help you. So see you on the other side.
Hey, thank you for watching today's episode. If you are a local business owner and you need help with your marketing, you've got a lot on your plate, a lot going on, and when you go to post on social media, it feels like nailing Jell-O to the wall. We want to help you. In fact, we are giving away 90 days of free social media marketing to one local business because we want to give back to our community. So if you apply today, there is a link to the form. You can see what the entire program is about, what we are giving away, and we would love for you to apply and potentially be a part of what we're doing here in our area.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm sitting here with Don Turnage. Don is the owner of Martial Arts Laboratory here in McKinney, as well as also in Princeton. He's been rolling on these mats for how long now?
Since 1998. Not these particular mats.
Not these particular mats, but certain mats.
Yes, sir.
So a long time. Don, we're so excited to have you on our podcast. Could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and a bit about your story? Just how you, like, who you are and your...
So, Don Turnage, I grew up in the Carolinas, kind of in the country, and just had a good time doing things like that. But all we did back then was just fight, and you didn't have a lot to do. So it was either we're playing in the woods and fighting. Well, I started boxing in Greenville, South Carolina when I was 7. And then eventually we wound up moving back to California where I was born, and I found wrestling and fell in love with wrestling. And later in life, moved to Texas. Not much later in life, but moved to Texas and did a little bit more boxing. And I found that if I'm not on the mats or in a ring or on in a cage doing what I love to do, I get a little grumpy. And that wasn't only me saying that. Apparently, that was my teachers and the principals and my mom. So martial arts for me, just that part of my life has been. I didn't realize, but I've been a martial artist my whole life. I've been self-employed most of my life too. I've only had 2 real jobs, and both those were duplicated. Meaning, I went to work for one guy, and then I left and started my own business. And after I sold a business to another company and fulfilled my obligation with them, he'd asked me to come back and help. Then after that, the company that bought me asked me to come back for a while. But I can tell you, for me, the martial arts and business go hand in hand. I said something the other day, I think I was on the phone, I can't remember who I was on the phone with, and I said, hey, I need to go to work. And I corrected that because I don't work for a living. I do exactly what I enjoy. And that's, there's many definitions of wealth, and to me, I think that's the best wealth you can get. I've got 3 lovely children. I've got a set of twins, boy-girl twins. In fact, they're 23, and then my oldest is 32. Watching them grow up around this, they don't practice martial arts, but they have the martial arts mentality. In my life, it's been interesting because every time I need something, it seems like it's always here on the mats. So,
wow. Yeah, and Don, you mentioned a little bit about being an entrepreneur before, specifically this gym. What is it about you or your personality that kind of said, hey, I want to start businesses, or I want to kind of build something from the ground up?
Some would say I don't play well with others, but that's not necessarily true. The ideas of things, right? It's I've only had one corporate type job, but my brain's always working, sometimes to my detriment. When I see things that can be better or done better, instead of sitting back and complaining about it, I go do it. The one job I had where there's true structure to it, I remember when they bought my company, they had me fly out to Alabama and do a whole psychological evaluation, like a 2-day deal, and they came back and they said, he could run your company. And a few of the guys thought that was good. My direct boss did not like that. But what it was is just keeping an open mind. So entrepreneurship to me has happened because of me willing to pull the trigger. So I used to shoot from the hip a lot, meaning I wouldn't sit back and think about things. I would go do it and learn from my mistakes. Well, what did it say? A wise man learns from mistakes, but a wiser man learns from others' mistakes. So I've been able to help people become wiser because I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But the thing about me for entrepreneurship is it's not freedom. That's something people get confused. There's a freedom to it. But when you work in a job, you usually have one or two bosses. Depending on what you do as an entrepreneur, you'll have several bosses because everyone in your clients is the boss. And being able to fulfill their needs, and while getting self-gratification for it, because really that's what it is for me, especially with what I'm doing now, is it's a selfish program for me because I get to see others grow and I get satisfaction from that. And I think that's in any business, right? Whether you're building, I did a lot of times in construction sales, and a lot of stuff I did you couldn't see. Irrigation, no one appreciates a sprinkler system, but I appreciated the fact that I was knowing that what I was doing was good. I was getting it at a good price. Then later on in life, I got in the foundation repair business. Well, no one can really stick. You do see the effects, but it's not like it's paint or it's a brand new countertop. So my entrepreneurship was always fulfilling someone else's needs and their wants, right? I never really was in a desire business, meaning because some people get into desire business, like people purchase things for different reasons, wants, needs, and desires. I was more of the need. I wanted to help people, and I think that's really what's allowed me to continue doing what I do. And I've had some bumps and bruises along the way. Yeah. I've never had to go to Burger King, which is what we call bankruptcy. I've been fortunate about that. I've been broke. I've been rich. I've been moderately okay. And it's a wave, but the difference is you truly have control. If you get up in the morning and go work, you're going to be successful. If you get up and don't work, you're not going to be successful.
Love it. For our listeners who have that entrepreneurial spark, but maybe haven't taken the leap, what would you tell them?
Buy a book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth. And it's not the internet myth, right? It's called E. It's been around for a long time. And it's going to show you real quick that you need to run your business like you're going to sell it every day, even if you're not. A lot of times, entrepreneurs, we get into the business thinking we're going to make all this money, we're going to have all this great freedom, all this great success. It depends again on how you measure those things, but the reality is that you really own a job until you start running it like a business.
So that's good. So now tell us a little bit about that journey you mentioned boxing and fighting, growing up. Tell us about your journey into BJJ. And for our viewers or listeners, BJJ stands for
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
That's right. And
it's not a dog.
So tell us about your journey into that, and then a little bit about your mentorship under Carlos Machado. For those of us who don't know, tell the viewers about that.
Well, so the honest story is I got fat again. I stopped boxing, I stopped wrestling, and I got fat. And it's like I wanted to find a way to get back in shape. And I didn't realize what I was getting into when I started this jiu-jitsu journey. I just wanted something to keep me active. Well, I didn't realize that my very first class was with Carlos over in Plano, because I was at my in-laws' house up in New Jersey, and I went for a run. And halfway through the run, my left shoe came untied. So I bent down and tied my left shoe and retied my right shoe because I was too fat to bend over again, right? And the thing was, it was a 10-mile loop, and I've never looked at something insurmountable. So I thought, I'm gonna do all 10 miles. Halfway through there, I went, heck, I still got 5 miles left. But I realized when I got back to Texas, because that was in New Jersey, that I needed to do something for my health. And so I looked up adult male wrestling in 1998. You did not want to put that in the internet. It was not good responses. But I found, and I grew up watching boxing and loving boxing. And Mike Tyson was actually already on his downhill slide because of Don King. I won't talk about that personally because it gets me a little angry. So I'd watched UFCs. Back then you had to rent the tape and plug it into it's called a VCR. It's this thing that sat on top of your TV, and the light was always blinking at the time. But you had to plug it in and actually watch these fights. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Well, I didn't realize those two things, they were coming together without me knowing. Because when I looked up that, I said, well, what about jiu-jitsu? And Carlos was literally what we call Plano blocks, Plano, Texas, 2 city blocks away from my house. And I didn't realize what God had in store for me when he did this, because Carlos Machado is one of his family. He's a Gracie. He's a cousin to the Gracies, so he's one of the founding families of jiu-jitsu. So my first class was with at that time they were blue and purple belts. So we have a belt system that goes white, blue, purple, brown, black. Well, this time the guys he had training in Texas period, the highest I think he had was a purple. And so Carlos says, put me in a headlock. So I grab him and I just sits down. We all put headlocks in when we were kids. And I've got it cinched in. All of a sudden I heard those guys go, oh, this guy's going to be in trouble when Carlos gets out. What does that mean? Well, about 5 minutes later, I realized because I fell asleep. He put me to sleep. And he looked at me and goes, you need to come back. Well, he goes, my friend, you need to come back. And so I fell in love with it. It wasn't the fact that he was able to beat me. It was the fact that I had this guy in a position, and this is just jiu-jitsu, but it also relates to everything in life, to where I did not think he could ever get out. And through his will and determination and experience, he got out. And I look back on all this now, because these were lessons I was learning without learning them, is that jiu-jitsu, martial arts, will give you the ability to handle any situation that comes around. I know that now. There's a part of me, I think, kind of understood that when it happened, but I didn't put it together until later on in life. So I fell in love with it. I mean, I was self-employed at the time, was probably training 3 times a day because I had the flexibility to do so. Really what it was, I was getting all my real work done so I could go do this. I've never not trained since 1998. I mean, I had some time off, having kids or injuries or what have you, but I quickly realized that this was a sport and an art that is not just about staying in shape. It's about mental clarity, physical clarity. Now it's became spiritual clarity to me. So,
Wow, it's beautiful. From my earliest experience here at the lab, for our viewers, my son actually trains here as well under Don. But from our earliest experiences here, we've just noticed that you have built such an incredible family environment. What is it about that why have you prioritized that? What was it about that value that you felt like it was so critical for your gym?
It's interesting because people say that. I try not to take credit for building it. The communities came together under this roof. Now, this roof is not the same roof it started at, but to me, it's just I treat others as I want to be treated. People ask me when you're going to have grandkids, which I think is happening pretty soon, but I don't know that for a fact. But I have grandkids every day, and I treat these kids like they're mine, and I treat my students like they're my family, and that has just turned into a culture. If someone needs help, we're there to help. If I would want an instructor to treat my kids if they were young doing martial arts the same way I treat my students. So the golden rule: do unto others as should be done unto you. Right? That's how I feel about it.
Love that. And because of that, there's like this overwhelming sense of heart and connection I feel like you have with the community and the community towards you, but also with one another. How has that, helped you, or maybe even like, what were some of the challenges you faced in kind of building that sort of culture to really get there? Because I'm sure like when you first started, you were trying to set that sort of expectation.
Kind of, but it happened organically. But I will tell you, one of the pitfalls is when you really invest something into someone and they leave for a reason it's not your doing, other than just having to move out of town or something, or someone in their family influences them. And every time someone leaves here, I lose a piece of me. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't have very many people leave because they're unhappy. That doesn't happen that often. It does happen sometimes, but especially the bigger you get, but meaning the gym. But that hard investment into someone, and I keep telling myself I'm not going to do it this time. I still do it. It's because again, when they step on this mat, I want them to be safe. I want them to enjoy themselves. I want them to have that they can walk in and tell me anything. It's and it truly is. It's one of those things that you can't. It's not done enough in the corporate world that people treat people like that. In fact, I'm usually skeptical when you see it in someone's mission statement. I think it's through actions, not through words.
Mm-hmm. Love that. So let's talk a little bit about the business side. What were some of the challenges you had to overcome early on with the Martial Arts Lab? Well,
it's funny. Again, it's been a God thing because I haven't had a lot. In other businesses, absolutely, right? I since the day I've opened, my rent's always been, everything's been paid. I may not have made much money, but everything was paid. The electricity was paid, rent was paid, insurance was paid. Again, I think it becomes more of the emotional investment that is taxing at times, especially when we go compete. Because there's sometimes I'll have, 15, 20 kids and 10 to 15 adults competing, and for these of you who don't know, when we do a jiu-jitsu competition, it's not like just doing katas. These kids and adults are out there, fighting. They're trying to submit someone and win. And I'm exhausted at the end of every one of those because I'm on the mat with every one of them, you know. But the challenge is, I guess, I shouldn't say, there are some challenges to it. It's me not asking for help when it comes to marketing, me originally not asking for help to talk to someone about, some open dialogue about how can I grow, what are your thoughts, what should we do. So I would say probably the marketing, the advertising, and the coaching.
For other entrepreneurs who have now, like yourself, maybe think back to that early phase of starting, when they start their business and they're facing similar challenges, what would you tell that younger Don who started this business based on some of those challenges?
So if it seems too good to be true, it is. Meaning if you get all these advertising people who want to come advertise for you or do your social media and do all these things and they're guaranteeing things, there's truly no guarantees in life. Get connect with someone, interview several people who you want to have help you with that aspect of the business. Because in any business, you need 3 personalities, and I kind of simplify it. You need type A personality, which is over the top, sales guy, which I've been accused of being. The type B personality, which can sit down and do the book work and all the paperwork, which I can do, I do not like doing. And then see the hardworking person, right? It's going to be here and do it every day in any business. You have to have all 3 of those personalities. I'm 54, and I've been basically working since I was 16. In all those years of working and being involved in different situations, I've only met 2 people who had all 3 of those personalities equally. And even still, they possess one more than the other. I would say find where your deficit is and hire someone to do that for you. If you can't afford it, find some way to make it happen. Most guys get into it. You get into a business, kind of like I said, because you want to fill a want or a need or a desire. Understand that's not what the business is about, because unfortunately we still have to run the business like a business. I've made it past a 5-year mark, which is a big hooray, right? The 10-year mark is coming up in 3 years. If you can make it past then, you'll survive. But also being willing to change. I mean, I'm OG, like they call me. They call me OG, right? I'm old school. And the whole Facebook, social media thing, I'm not good at it, right? I suck at it. And that's ever changing. I mean, for people who are in that space, they've got to continually be on top of their game. Just like, with me and my jiu-jitsu, I got to keep it innovative and keep changing. You've got to be willing to change. And if you're doing it yourself, you're less likely to see the changes that you need. Because we get stuck in that rut of driving down the road every day. We don't realize if we take a left, it might be easier. If we go right, you never want to go back. Going back's not healthy. My stepdad told me something when I was a kid, that a business is like a very fine wine. You got the grapes. You got to pick the grapes so they continue to grow. You don't want them to die on the vine. And a lot of businesses die on the vine because they're not willing to be picked and changed.
Wow, that's really good. So Don, over the last year, you just launched a brand new location. Tell us a little bit more about that process. What was that like for you?
So again, it's a God thing for me because I started doing this gym full time 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, and I was not in contract anymore. But I had a guy call me from my old life, I call it, and he's like, "Hey, I need you to do this." I said, "I don't have the time to. Because I'll pay you. Just name your price." I named my price. Well, the money I got paid from that could have paid off what little debt I had, and have money left in the bank. But I was getting calls from Princeton, which isn't that far down the road from my McKinney location, but they couldn't make it here in time. And I'd looked at it before, but I happened to drive up to Sherman to go look at a location up there because I figured, I'll take this money, I'll put one of my other students in business, because that's my goal with this, is to get my students and put them in a business they love doing and let them continue to hopefully experience what I've experienced. And so I went up and as I came back from Sherman, if you guys know the area, I drove down 82 and came down 380. And there's a space there for rent, and I called the guy, and we talked, and I called my son, who's now, I bounce things off of him quite often, the younger one, and I pulled the trigger. Well, typically when you start a new business in any town, it's going to take you 3 to 4 months because you get permits and this. I signed the lease February 1st, and I was open March 3rd. The challenges were the people in McKinney got jealous because the people in Princeton had new mats. So I had to redo all the mats here too. But really, it was honestly is understanding that if you haven't been down the road of opening a business where you're going to have a storefront, do your due diligence. In fact, I called you and asked you about certain things regarding permitting on bathrooms, the space you were in at the time. Reach out and get all the information you can, and get more information than you think you need, because I guarantee you'll need it. The financing all fell in place. I don't have any partners in my business. I've been that route before. I'm not saying don't do that, but it was not successful for me. The burden of, and I say burden in a positive way, of all the expenses and all the responsibility will drive you faster and make you be better quicker. Once I got the location open, it's just happened. Staffing, it wasn't a problem because I already had my person picked out. I've had my person picked out for 6 years. The second he walked to my gym, I knew who was going to run my next gym. And the third one, I already had that guy picked out too. He doesn't know it yet. And that hopefully that'll be coming up pretty soon too.
Love that.
So, but I would tell you, just the challenges would be, I didn't face as many because I'd already been down the road before, but you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. Practiced a few times. Call the city. Go visit with them. Ask them what you need. If you're not opening a storefront, call your suppliers and ask them what kind of credit lines you need. Ask these questions ahead of time, and ask redundant questions as you have to. The only stupid question, like I said, is the one that's not asked.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Don. Tell us a little bit about that journey of trusting other people with your business, because essentially you can't be in two places at once.
Correct.
You have to, in some sense, you have to trust, Jonathan, or potentially a third person as you start a new gym down the road. What is that like as a business owner?
Again, from experience, I had a partner once that did not turn out well. He almost sent me to Burger King, right? And so my trust in people when it came to my business was very, very non-existent after that. But what I found with this is when people would roll, that's what we call when we practice in jiu-jitsu with Jonathan, they said, he rolls just like you. And people still say that today. And so to me, he was the perfect protege to take over. It's hard to trust anyone with your children. And to me, that's what this is. These are my babies. My gyms are my babies. But you've got to take that leap of faith. For most businesses have contracts in place. There's some weird terms like suicide clause. You can put that in and look it up on when you're doing a contract with someone. But if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. Go with your gut, go with your heart. Again, you may make some mistakes along the way, but they're valuable. And there's a reason you learn those mistakes. For me, I know Jonathan teaches kids who I teach kids. I still go over there and teach at the other gym, typically on Mondays and Thursdays. I don't know what's going to happen when we have the third location. I mean, I can't be in so many places at once. But if you instill the values into someone early on, so, again, promoting organically instead of going outside your trusted group, I think it helps tremendously.
So, Don, what would you tell other business owners who are at a similar place you were about a year ago? They have something good going, they know they got to grow, but they're afraid maybe to take that leap. What would you tell them in their journey of stepping out and starting, in some ways, like a new baby, like you just said?
Prove to yourself why you shouldn't. If you go back and look at all the reasons why you think you cannot, those are all problems you have within yourself that's stopping you from doing it. If you are trying to open a second location or expand your current, breadth of services wherever you're at, you'll find that the reasons that are holding you back are the reasons you started the business in the first place. And you've just got to understand that if you're truly growing it, you're not just growing it for yourself, you're growing it for other people. Because as a business owner, you're not just taking care of yourself, you're taking care of other people's families. And that can be a heavy burden on your heart as well. But understand, by you doing this, you're going to help others, right? And if you don't feel like you want to help others, then you shouldn't expand. But if you're in the business, if you truly love what you're doing, you want others to have it, you've got to expand. You've got to grow.
Don, our conversation is coming to a close, but maybe the most important question for this entire conversation is if you could peel back all the layers of work personality, family, life. What drives you? What's your why?
The satisfaction of others and seeing them succeed, and seeing the things that I've taken from just in jiu-jitsu, not even just in business, and done in other parts of my life, to see other people have that success, and to see a kid come in who's, especially talking about what I do now, who's having problems in school, and 4 months later, 4 days later the other day, I had a parent come say, it's totally changed. That's my satisfaction, is helping others. If you can get paid helping others, that's great. But understand, for me, I don't make the money I used to when I was in other businesses. I have a lot less now than I ever had before, but I couldn't ask for any more. And that's truly how I feel.
That's incredible. Don, we're literally sitting in your location, but for everyone watching this video, how do people find you both in person and online?
So online is themartialartslaboratory.com. We are on Instagram, we're on Facebook. I don't do all the other ones yet. I might someone's going to make me do some other stuff. Oh, we also have a YouTube channel. Not a lot of subscribers yet, but it's the Martial Arts Laboratory as well. So that's us. And you can also come, locations. We're, of course, we're in McKinney on 2000 North McDonald Street, McKinney, Texas. We're also in Princeton at 501 East Princeton Drive, right beside the post office.
Don, it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you for this conversation.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.